Dr. Jake Morrison wiped his hands on his surgical gown and looked at the alien patient on the table. The creature had 4 arms and skin that changed color when it breathed. Jake had just finished removing a piece of metal from its chest. The operation was successful, but he could see the other doctors staring at him with their strange eyes. "Another lucky guess, human," said Dr. Zethkri, the chief medical officer. His insect-like head clicked as he spoke. "Your methods are so primitive. No scans, no computer analysis, just cutting and hoping." Jake said nothing. He had learned not to argue with his alien colleagues at Medical Station Hippocrates. They thought humans were savage because Earth was a dangerous world. They called humans Deathworlders like it was something bad. To them, Jake was just a barbarian who somehow got lucky with medicine. The medical station was huge, floating in space between 3 solar systems. It was the best hospital in the galaxy. Doctors from 47 different alien species worked there. They had technology that could heal almost anything, but they all thought Jake was the weakest link on their team. Jake walked to his small office and sat down. Through the window, he could see ships coming and going. Rich aliens came here when they got sick. The station charged enormous fees, but they could cure diseases that killed entire planets. Jake was the only human doctor on the station, and most days he felt very alone. His computer beeped. Commander Lisa Hayes appeared on the screen. She was the human liaison officer, one of only 3 humans on the entire station. "Jake, you need to get to the main conference room right now," Lisa said. Her face looked worried. "We have a big problem." Jake hurried through the clean white hallways. Alien doctors and nurses moved past him, their various tentacles, claws, and limbs working at computer terminals. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking plants. They all ignored Jake as he passed. The conference room was packed. Dr. Zethkri stood at the front, his 4 insect eyes looking at a huge screen. Captain Ben Rodriguez, the human security chief, sat in the back corner. Dr. Amy Carter, the human scientist who studied alien biology, was taking notes on her tablet. "Doctors," Dr. Zethkri began, "we have received a distress call from the luxury cruise ship Serenity's Edge. The situation is extremely serious." The screen showed a massive ship spinning slowly in space. It was beautiful, with curved metal and glass sections that sparkled with lights. But some of those lights were flickering, and Jake could see dark smoke coming from several areas. The ship carries 3,000 passengers from 12 different species. Dr. Zethkri continued. They were on a pleasure cruise through the Centauri system, but something has gone very wrong. A new image appeared. This one showed the inside of the ship. The hallways were filled with smoke and floating debris. Bodies lay scattered on the floors. Some were moving weakly. Others were not moving at all. 3 hours ago, their medical bay was destroyed by a toxic gas leak, Dr. Zethkri explained. The ship's gravity generators are failing. Temperature control is broken, and worst of all, an unknown biological agent is spreading through their air system. Jake leaned forward in his chair. This sounded bad, but he had seen worse during his time as a combat medic. "What kind of biological agent?" asked Dr. Veltar, a tall blue alien with 6 arms. "Unknown," Dr. Zethkri replied. "It affects different species in different ways. The aquatic delians are drowning in their own fluids. The telepathic Mentari are losing their minds. The silicon-based Korthans are literally dissolving." Murmurs of fear filled the room. Jake could see panic in the alien doctor's eyes. "The environmental conditions on the ship are now lethal," Dr. Zethkri continued. "Toxic gases in the air, gravity switching between crushing weight and zero gravity, temperatures from freezing cold to burning hot. Any rescue team would die within minutes." Dr. Himmel, who looked like a walking tree, raised one of his branch arms. "What about sending in medical robots? The electromagnetic interference is too strong. Remote devices will not function." "Sealed environment suits?" suggested Dr. Quex, a creature that resembled a giant slug. "The temperature extremes would destroy any suit we have. The toxic gases would eat through the filters." Jake studied the data on his tablet. The conditions were terrible, but they reminded him of some of the war zones he had worked in. Hostile environments, multiple casualties, limited resources. It was exactly the kind of chaos he had trained for. "So what do we do?" asked Dr. Veltar. Dr. Zethkri's insect head drooped. "I do not know. Perhaps we can only watch and hope some of them survive until the ship reaches a safe port." "That will take 6 days," Captain Rodriguez said from the back. "Most of them will be dead by then." The room fell silent. Jake looked around at all the brilliant alien doctors. They had technology he could barely understand. They could cure diseases with a wave of their tentacles or claws. But faced with this problem, they were giving up. Jake stood up. "I'll go." Every eye in the room turned to him. Dr. Zethkri's mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned was laughter. "Human, this is not a joke. The conditions on that ship would kill you instantly." "Maybe," Jake said. "But people are dying right now. Someone has to try." "It is impossible," Dr. Zethkri said. "No single being could handle such a complex medical emergency. Under those conditions, you would be dead before you even reached the first patient." Jake looked at the screen again. He saw the spinning ship, the smoke, the bodies in the hallways. He had seen similar scenes before, in Earth's wars and disasters. Other people had called those situations impossible too. "I've worked in worse places," Jake said quietly. The alien doctors began talking all at once, their various voices creating a strange symphony of clicks, hisses, and musical tones. They were telling him he was crazy. They were saying humans were too reckless. They were explaining why it could not be done. But Jake was not listening to them anymore. He was studying the ship's layout, thinking about what supplies he would need and planning his approach. In his mind, he was already there. The conference room exploded into chaos. Alien voices filled the air with clicks, whistles, and strange musical sounds. Dr. Zethkri waved his forearms to get everyone's attention. "Absolutely not," the insect doctor said firmly. "I will not send anyone to their death, especially not on such a foolish mission." Jake remained standing. "With respect, sir, people are dying right now. Every minute we waste talking is another life lost." Dr. Veltar, the tall blue alien, stepped forward. "Human, you do not understand. The toxic gases alone will destroy your lungs in seconds. The temperature changes will cook you alive or freeze you solid. The gravity shifts will crush your bones or send you floating helplessly through space." "I understand the risks," Jake said calmly. "No, you do not," Dr. Himmel interrupted, his tree-like branches rustling with agitation. "Your species is known for reckless behavior. This is not bravery. This is stupidity." Commander Lisa Hayes stood up from her seat. "Maybe we should listen to what Jake has to say before we dismiss him." "Thank you," Jake said, looking at Lisa gratefully. "I know this seems impossible to you, but I've worked in hostile environments before. During the border wars, I treated wounded soldiers in chemical weapon zones. I've performed surgery during artillery bombardments. I've saved lives in places where other medics said it couldn't be done." Dr. Zethkri's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Those were Earth conditions. This is different. This is a combination of every possible danger at once." Jake activated his tablet and projected some images onto the main screen. "These are photos from my service record. This is me treating casualties during the Titan colony disaster. Toxic atmosphere, failing life support, and over 200 wounded people." The room fell quiet as the aliens looked at the images. They showed Jake in a damaged spacesuit, working on injured humans while explosions lit up the background. "This is me during the Mercury mining accident," Jake continued, changing the image. "Zero gravity, extreme heat, poisonous gases, and a rescue that took 14 hours. Captain Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "I remember that one. Jake saved 43 miners that day. The other rescue teams said it was impossible." Dr. Amy Carter stood up. "I've been analyzing the biological data from the ship. Jake might actually have a chance. Human immune systems are less specialized than ours. They can adapt to threats that would kill other species immediately. Adapt or die," Lisa added. "That's how humans evolved, on a world that was trying to kill them every day." Dr. Zethkri studied Jake with his compound eyes. Even if you could survive the environment, how would you treat patients from 12 different species? You know nothing about Korathan biology or Mentari neural systems. I know basic anatomy, Jake replied. All living things need oxygen, nutrients, and functioning organs. The details are different, but the principles are the same. Stop the bleeding, clear the airways, stabilize the vital signs. Primitive thinking, Dr. Queck said dismissively. Maybe, Jake agreed. But sometimes primitive solutions work when advanced ones fail. Dr. Zethkri was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What would you need? A modified emergency shuttle, with basic life support, standard medical supplies, nothing fancy, and a way to communicate with Dr. Carter so she can help me identify alien physiology as I work. The electromagnetic interference will make communication difficult, Captain Rodriguez warned. We'll figure it out, Lisa said. Humans are good at improvising. Dr. Veltar shook his blue head. This is madness. We should contact the Galactic Medical Council and ask for their best crisis team. That will take 2 days to organize, Jake pointed out. How many people will die while we wait? The room fell silent again. Jake could see the aliens thinking, their various alien features twitching and changing color. Dr. Amy Carter cleared her throat. I vote we let him try. I can provide him with basic information about each species' biology, their weak points, their strong points, what medicines might work. And I can modify a shuttle to handle those conditions, Captain Rodriguez added. Reinforced hull, backup life support, emergency medical equipment. Commander Lisa Hayes nodded. The human government will take full responsibility. This is our choice. Dr. Zethkri looked around the room at his fellow alien doctors. None of them spoke. Finally, he turned back to Jake. Dr. Morrison, I think you are insane, but I also think you are our only hope. I will authorize this mission, but I want it on record that I believe it is suicide. Understood, Jake said. You will have 4 hours to prepare. Captain Rodriguez will modify the shuttle. Dr. Carter will brief you on alien biology. Commander, Hayes will handle the paperwork with Galactic Command. Jake nodded and headed for the door. As he walked out, he heard Dr. Himmel whisper to Dr. Quex, the human will be dead within an hour of reaching that ship. In the shuttle bay, Captain Rodriguez was already working on the emergency medical transport. Sparks flew as he welded additional armor plating to the hull. This is crazy, you know, Rodriguez said without looking up from his work. Yeah, I know. The aliens think we're all suicidal maniacs. Maybe we are. Rodriguez laughed. Probably. But that's what makes us human, right? Dr. Amy Carter arrived with a stack of data tablets. I've downloaded everything we know about the affected species, their biology, their common diseases, their reactions to standard medicines. She handed Jake the tablets. The Delians breathe through gills in their necks. If they're drowning in their own fluids, you'll need to clear those passages. The Mentari are telepathic. Mental trauma affects their entire nervous system. The Korthans are silicon-based, so carbon-based medicines won't work on them. Jake studied the information quickly. It was a lot to remember, but he had studied under pressure before. One more thing, Amy said quietly. The biological agent they mentioned, I think it might be artificial. The way it affects different species so specifically, that's not natural. Biological weapon? Maybe. Or a terraforming agent that went wrong. Either way, be careful. It might be designed to kill. Commander Lisa Hayes appeared with a stack of official documents. I've cleared you with Galactic Command. They think we're all crazy too, but they're not stopping us. Jake signed the papers without reading them. Legal details didn't matter when people were dying. 2 hours later, Jake sat in the pilot's seat of the modified shuttle. The cockpit was cramped and filled with extra medical equipment. Life support monitors beeped and flashed around him. Final check, Captain Rodriguez said over the radio. Life support? Green. Medical supplies? Loaded and secured. Communications? Amy, can you hear me? Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the static. "Loud and clear, Jake. I'll be monitoring everything and helping however I can." Through the shuttle's window, Jake could see the alien doctors watching from the observation deck. Their strange faces looked worried and sad, like they were watching a funeral. "Serenity's edge is 3 hours away at maximum speed," Lisa said. "Their condition is getting worse. Several decks have gone completely dark." Jake started the engines. The shuttle hummed to life around him. "Medical Station Hippocrates, this is Emergency Shuttle 1 requesting departure clearance." "Clearance granted," Dr. Zethkree's voice said over the radio. "Dr. Morrison, good luck. Prove us wrong." Jake smiled as he flew away from the station. "I plan to." Jake's shuttle moved through space toward the spinning cruise ship. As he got closer, he could see the damage was worse than anyone had reported. Large sections of the hull were cracked open. Debris floated around the ship like a deadly cloud. Emergency lights flashed weakly in some areas while other sections were completely dark. "Amy, are you seeing this?" Jake said into his radio. "Yes, and it's worse than we thought." Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the static. "I'm reading massive hull breaches on decks 5, 7, and 12. The ship is losing atmosphere fast." Jake guided his shuttle toward the main docking bay. The bay doors were stuck half open and he could see bodies floating in the zero gravity inside. Some were moving weakly, others were still. "Docking bay is compromised," Jake reported. "I'm going to try the emergency airlock on deck 3. "Be careful, Jake," Commander Hayes said. "We're losing your signal. The electromagnetic interference is getting stronger." Jake maneuvered his shuttle to the emergency airlock. The ship was spinning slowly, making docking difficult. He had to time his approach perfectly to avoid being crushed against the hull. "Got it," Jake said as his shuttle connected with a loud clang. He checked his equipment one more time. Medical, kit, portable scanner, emergency surgery tools, and a modified breathing mask that could filter most toxins. Jake opened the airlock and stepped into the cruise ship. The smell hit him immediately, a mixture of smoke, chemicals, and something else he couldn't identify. The gravity was wrong too, pulling him sideways instead of down. "This is Jake. I'm inside the ship. Gravity is about 60% normal and pointing the wrong direction." "Copy that." Amy's voice was getting weaker. "The ship's gravity generators are failing. Be ready for sudden changes." Jake moved carefully through the corridor. The walls were covered with a strange, sticky substance that glowed faintly green. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting weird shadows everywhere. He found his first patient around the corner, a Delian, one of the aquatic aliens. The creature was gasping for air, its gills opening and closing desperately. Thick fluid was coming out of its neck slits. Jake knelt beside the alien. He had never treated a Delian before, but Amy had briefed him on their anatomy. He used a small suction device to clear the fluid from the creature's gills. "That's it," Jake whispered as the Delian's breathing became easier. He gave the alien a dose of universal antibiotics and moved on. The next corridor was filled with zero gravity. Jake had to pull himself along the walls using handholds. He found 3 more patients floating helplessly, 2 Mentari and a Corathan. The Mentari were the telepathic ones. They were conscious but seemed confused and scared. Jake could see blood coming from their ears and noses. "Neurological damage," Jake said to himself. He gave them each a mild sedative to calm their minds and stop the bleeding. The Corathan was worse. The silicon-based alien was literally dissolving. Parts of its rocky skin were falling off like sand. Jake had no idea how to treat it, but he remembered Amy's advice about basic principles. The creature needed structural support. Jake used medical tape and bandages to hold the Corathan's form together. It wasn't perfect, but it might buy some time. "Amy, can you hear me?" Static filled his radio. "Jake. Barely. Losing signal." Jake was on his own now. He moved deeper into the ship, following the emergency lighting toward the main passenger areas. The temperature was getting hotter, and his breathing mask was working hard to filter the toxic air. He found the main dining hall, and his heart sank. Hundreds of aliens lay scattered across the floor. Some were still moving, but many were not. The biological agent had affected each species differently, creating a nightmare of symptoms. Jake began moving from patient to patient, doing what he could. He cleared airways, stopped bleeding, gave medicine when he could, and comfort when he couldn't. The gravity kept changing, sometimes crushing him against the floor, sometimes sending him floating toward the ceiling. His biggest challenge came when he found a group of mixed species trapped in a collapsed section. A Delian, 2 humans, a Mentari, and something he had never seen before were all suffering from the same symptoms: severe burns and respiratory failure. This doesn't make sense, Jake said to himself. The biological agent should affect each species differently. Then he realized the truth. This wasn't just the biological agent. These beings had been exposed to something else, probably a chemical, leak or radiation. They all had the same symptoms because they had all been poisoned by the same thing. Jake worked quickly, treating the burns with synthetic skin and giving them all oxygen from his portable tank. The unknown alien was the worst case. It had multiple arms and transparent skin, and Jake could see its internal organs shutting down. "Come on," Jake whispered, trying one treatment after another. Finally, he tried something desperate, a dose of human adrenaline, modified with alien-compatible chemicals. The creature's vital signs stabilized. As Jake continued through the ship, he began to understand the pattern. The biological agent was making every species sick in different ways, but it was also making them vulnerable to other dangers: the toxic gases, the radiation leaks, the failing life support systems. "It's designed to weaken immune systems," Jake said to his dead radio. "Then everything else kills you." He reached the ship's medical bay, or what was left of it. The room was destroyed, but some equipment was still working. Jake salvaged what he could: more medicine, a better scanner, some surgical tools. The scanner showed him something disturbing. The biological agent was concentrated in the ship's air recycling system. It was being pumped throughout the vessel, getting stronger with each cycle. "I need to get to the source," Jake said. He checked his map. The air recycling center was on deck 8, but that section was showing as completely compromised. Toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature, and crushing gravity. Even by human standards, it was a death trap. Jake looked at his remaining supplies. He had enough medicine to treat maybe 50 more patients. But there were hundreds still alive on the ship, and more were dying every minute. He made a decision. Instead of continuing to treat patients one by one, he would go to the source of the problem. If he could stop the biological agent from spreading, he might save everyone at once. The journey to Deck 8 was the hardest thing Jake had ever done. He had to crawl through damaged corridors where the gravity was crushing and the air was so toxic that even his mask couldn't filter it all. The temperature was over 50 degrees Celsius, and his suit was not designed for such heat. He found the air recycling center behind a sealed door marked with danger symbols in 12 different languages. Jake's scanner showed deadly levels of radiation and toxic gases beyond the door. "This is where I find out if humans are as tough as everyone says," Jake muttered. He opened the door and stepped into hell. The room was filled with green mist and the sound of failing machinery. In the center was a large container that had been cracked open. Strange liquid was leaking out and being sucked into the air system. Jake approached the container carefully. The label was in a language he didn't recognize, but the warning symbols were clear enough. This was not medicine or food. This was something much more dangerous. As he got closer, Jake could see that the container had not been broken by accident. Someone had deliberately opened it. The edges were too clean, too precise. This was sabotage, Jake realized. He needed to stop the leak, but the radiation and toxic fumes were making him sick. His vision was blurring and his hands were shaking. He had maybe minutes before his body gave out. Jake used his emergency repair kit to seal the container. It was not a perfect fix, but it would stop most of the leak. Then he began the long journey back to the safer parts of the ship. By the time he reached the passenger areas again, Jake could barely stand, but he could already see that his plan was working. The aliens who had been unconscious were starting to wake up. Those who had been barely alive were getting stronger. Made it, Jake whispered to himself as he collapsed against a wall. But his work was not done. He still had hundreds of patients to treat, and his supplies were running low. Jake forced himself to stand and continued his rounds, treating the sick and injured with whatever he had left. The biological agent was no longer spreading, but its effects would last for hours. Jake had to keep people alive until rescue ships could reach them. He was running on pure determination now, moving from patient to patient like a machine. His body was exhausted, but his mind was clear. This was what he had trained for. The impossible situation where everything went wrong, and only human stubbornness could save the day. Jake moved through the ship like a ghost. His body was exhausted, but he could not stop. Every corridor brought new patients who needed help. The biological agent was no longer spreading, but its damage was still killing people. He found a group of Corothan children trapped in a playroom. The silicon-based youngsters were dissolving faster than the adults. Their rocky skin was falling apart like sand, and they were scared and crying in their strange mineral voices. Jake had used up all his silicon-compatible medicine hours ago. But he remembered something from his chemistry classes. Silicon beings needed mineral supplements to maintain their structure. He looked around the playroom and found what he needed. The children's building blocks were made of compressed minerals. Jake crushed the blocks into powder and mixed them with sterile water. It was not real medicine, but it gave the children's bodies the raw materials they needed to rebuild their damaged skin. Slowly, their rocky forms began to solidify again. "Stay here and keep drinking this," Jake told them in simple words, hoping they could understand. He left them with the makeshift medicine and moved on. In the next section, Jake discovered something that changed everything. A human passenger was sitting against the wall, conscious and relatively healthy. She was a middle-aged woman with short, gray hair and intelligent eyes. "Doctor?" she asked weakly. "Are you real or am I hallucinating?" "I'm real," Jake said, kneeling beside her. "I'm Dr. Morrison from Medical Station Hippocrates. What's your name?" "Kate Williams," she replied. "I'm a biochemist. I was traveling to the Centauri colonies for a conference." Jake examined her quickly. She had some of the biological agent's effects, but much milder than the aliens. "How do you feel?" "Sick, but not dying like the others. I think my immune system is fighting off whatever this stuff is." Jake's mind raced. "Kate, I need your help. I think humans might have a natural immunity to this biological agent. Can you walk?" "I think so." Jake helped Kate to her feet. Together they moved through the ship, and Jake began to notice a pattern. The few human passengers were all in better condition than the aliens. They were sick, but not dying. "This gives me an idea," Jake said. "But it's dangerous." "More dangerous than staying here?" Kate asked. Jake found the ship's medical fabricator in the ruined medical bay. It was damaged but still partially functional. He began programming it to create a new medicine. "What are you doing?" Kate asked. "I'm going to use human blood plasma as a base for a universal treatment," Jake explained. "Human immune systems are less specialized than alien ones. Our antibodies might work against this biological agent for all species." "You're talking about using your own blood?" "It's the only option. I need to extract my plasma, modify it for each species' biology, and hope it works." Kate looked worried. "Jake, you've been exposed to radiation and toxins for hours. Your blood might not be safe." "It's safer than letting everyone die." Jake connected himself to the medical fabricator. The machine began extracting his blood, separating the plasma, and analyzing its contents. The process was painful and made him weaker, but he could see it was working. The fabricator began producing modified versions of his plasma for different alien species. Each batch was adjusted for different body chemistry. One for silicon-based life, one for aquatic species, one for telepathic beings. "This is insane," Kate said, watching the process. "Yeah, but it might work." Jake tested the first batch on a dying Delian. Within minutes, the alien's gills cleared and its breathing improved. The second batch helped a Mentari stop bleeding from its ears. The third batch slowed the dissolution of a Corathan's skin. "It's working," Jake whispered. "Kate, I need you to help me distribute this to the other survivors." For the next 2 hours, Jake and Kate moved through the ship like a medical team. Jake continued donating blood plasma while Kate administered the treatments. They worked section by section, saving lives that had been given up for lost. But Jake was getting weaker. He had lost too much blood, been exposed to too much radiation, and pushed his body beyond its limits. His hands were shaking and his vision was blurring. "Jake, you need to stop," Kate said. "You're going to kill yourself." "Not yet," Jake replied. "There's still one more section." The final group of survivors was trapped in the ship's emergency shelter. It was the most damaged part of the vessel, where the original explosion had occurred. The radiation levels were deadly and the structural damage made it almost impossible to reach. "I can't let you go in there," Kate said. "The radiation will kill you." Jake looked at his scanner. 23 life signs in the shelter, all fading, fast. Among them were several children from different species. "Those people are going to die if someone doesn't help them," Jake said. "And you're going to die if you go in there." Jake smiled weakly. "Maybe. But I became a doctor to save lives, not to play it safe." He gave Kate the remaining medicine. "If I don't come back, keep treating people. Use the fabricator to make more plasma treatments from any healthy humans you can find." Jake put on his emergency radiation suit and entered the damaged section. The radiation detector on his belt began clicking rapidly. He had maybe 10 minutes before the exposure would kill him. The emergency shelter was a nightmare. The walls were cracked, the air was toxic, and the gravity kept shifting from crushing weight to zero. The survivors inside were barely alive, huddled together in the center of the room. Jake worked faster than he ever had before. He gave injections, cleared airways, and stabilized the worst cases. His radiation detector was clicking so fast it sounded like static. Among the survivors were 2 human children, a brother and sister who could not have been older than 10 years old. They were scared and alone, their parents nowhere to be seen. "Are you here to save us?" the little girl asked. "Yes," Jake said, giving her an injection of the modified plasma. "You're going to be okay." Jake treated everyone in the shelter using up the last of his medicine. The radiation was making him sick, but he kept working until every person was stabilized. As he prepared to leave, the ship shuddered violently. New alarms began sounding, and Jake could hear the sound of tearing metal. "This is not good," he said to himself. Jake's radio crackled to life. Kate's voice came through the static. "Jake, where are you? The ship is breaking apart. Rescue vessels are here, but we need to evacuate now." Jake looked around the shelter. The people he had just saved were too weak to move on their own. Someone would need to carry them to the rescue ships. "Kate, I'm going to be a while. Start evacuating the healthy survivors. I'll get the people from the emergency shelter." "Jake, the ship won't hold together much longer." "Then I better work fast." Jake began moving the weakest survivors toward the exit. One by one, he carried them through the damaged corridors. The ship was shaking constantly now, and pieces of the ceiling were falling around him. He had moved 15 people when the corridor behind him collapsed. Jake was cut off from the shelter with 8 people still trapped inside. "Kate, I've got a problem," Jake said into his radio. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where I need to find another way out and I'm running out of time." Jake looked around the damaged section. There had to be another route to the emergency shelter. He found a maintenance shaft that ran parallel to the collapsed corridor. It was barely wide enough for a human, and it was filled with sharp metal, edges, and sparking electrical wires. "Here goes nothing," Jake said, crawling into the shaft. The maintenance shaft was like crawling through a meat grinder. Jake cut his hands and arms on the metal edges, got shocked by loose wires, and had to squeeze through spaces that were almost too small for his body. But he made it back to the emergency shelter, just as another explosion rocked the ship. The 2 human children were crying, and the alien survivors were too weak to understand what was happening. "It's okay," Jake told them all. "We're getting out of here." Jake found an emergency escape pod in the shelter. It was designed for 5 people, but he managed to squeeze all 8 survivors inside. As the pod launched from the dying ship, Jake looked back at the cruise liner that had been his battlefield for the past 8 hours. The ship was breaking apart, but he could see other escape pods and rescue shuttles moving away from the wreckage. Kate had done her job. The survivors were being evacuated. Jake's emergency pod was picked up by a rescue ship from Medical Station Hippocrates. As he was carried to the medical bay, he could hear the voices of his alien colleagues over the radio. Impossible, Dr. Zethkri was saying. The human actually did it. How many survivors? Asked Dr. Veltar. Over 2,000, came the reply. Morrison saved over 2,000 lives. Jake smiled as the medical team worked on him. His body was failing from radiation exposure and blood loss, but he had done what he came to do. He had proven that sometimes the impossible was just difficult, and difficult was something humans could handle. Jake woke up in a medical bed 3 days later. The room was bright and clean, nothing like the nightmare he had lived through on the cruise ship. His body ached everywhere, and machines were beeping softly around him. "You're awake," said a familiar voice. Commander Lisa Hayes was sitting in a chair beside his bed, reading from a tablet. "How long was I out?" Jake asked, his voice rough and dry. 3 days. The doctors weren't sure you would wake up at all. You had severe radiation poisoning, blood loss, and about 12 different toxins in your system. Jake tried to sit up, but his body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "The survivors, did everyone make it?" Lisa smiled. "That's what I was reading about. The final count is 2,047 survivors. You saved over 2,000 lives, Jake. What about the ones who didn't make it? Most of those died before you even reached the ship. Of the people who were still alive when you got there, you saved 96%. The alien doctors are calling it impossible." Jake closed his eyes and felt a wave of relief wash over him. It had been worth it. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Kate Williams, the biochemist who helped you, she's been working with Dr. Carter to study your blood plasma treatment. They think it could be used to create vaccines for dozens of biological weapons. Good for her. The Galactic Medical Council wants to talk to you when you're better. They're very interested in your methods." The door to Jake's room opened and Dr. Zethkri walked in. The insect doctor looked different somehow, less proud, more humble. "Dr. Morrison," he said formally, "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," Jake replied. "Yes, I do. I called your methods primitive. I said you would die within an hour. I was wrong about everything." Dr. Zethkri moved closer to the bed. "I have been a doctor for 47 years. I have studied medicine on 12 different worlds. But in all that time, I have never seen anything like what you did on that ship. I just did my job." "No, you did much more than that. You solved problems that our best medical minds said were impossible. You treated species you had never seen before using improvised methods. You saved lives in conditions that would kill any other doctor in the galaxy." Jake looked at the alien doctor with tired eyes. "So what happens now?" "Now everything changes," Dr. Zethkri said. "The Galactic Medical Consortium is creating a new department of emergency xenomedicine. They want you to head it. What does that mean? It means teaching other doctors your methods. It means training medical teams to work in hostile environments. It means showing the galaxy that sometimes the old ways are better than the new ways." Over the next few weeks, Jake recovered slowly. Visitors came to see him every day. Dr. Amy Carter brought him reports about the investigation into the cruise ship disaster. The biological agent had been a terraforming compound that was stolen and weaponized by terrorists. The attack had been meant to kill aliens and make humans look dangerous. Instead, it proved that humans are the galaxy's best hope for surviving impossible situations, Amy said. Captain Rodriguez visited with stories about the rescue operation. The alien rescue teams had been amazed by Jake's work. They found survivors in places that should have been completely lethal, all of them treated with methods that seemed to break every rule of medicine. "They're calling you the Deathworld Doctor now," Rodriguez said with a grin. "The alien news networks can't stop talking about how a primitive human saved the day." Kate Williams came by several times to discuss the medical applications of Jake's plasma treatment. She had been offered a job at Medical Station Hippocrates to continue the research. "You've changed everything, Jake," she said. "Your blood plasma, technique is being tested for use against biological weapons across the galaxy. You might have prevented the next pandemic. The most surprising visitor was Dr. Veltar, the tall blue alien who had been one of Jake's strongest critics. He came with a formal request from his home world. "Dr. Morrison," he said in his musical voice, "my people would like to invite you to our planet. We want to learn your emergency medical techniques. Our world has many natural disasters, and our doctors are not prepared for such chaos." "I'd be honored," Jake said. More requests came in every day. The rock-like Korthans wanted to learn how to treat silicon-based beings with improvised materials. The aquatic Delians needed help with underwater emergency medicine. Even the telepathic Mentari were interested in Jake's methods for treating mental trauma under stress. When Jake was finally released from the medical bay, he found that Medical Station Hippocrates had changed. A new wing was under construction, dedicated to emergency medicine training. The alien doctors who had once ignored him now studied his techniques and asked for his advice. Dr. Zethkri gave Jake a tour of the new facilities. "We are calling it the Morrison Institute for Emergency Medicine," he said. "The first students will arrive next month." "Students from how many species?" Jake asked. 23 so far, but more are applying every day. Everyone wants to learn how humans do the impossible. The new department was impressive. It had training rooms that could simulate any type of emergency environment. There were chambers that could recreate the conditions of failed spaceships, toxic worlds, and natural disasters. Students would learn to work in gravity that changed, without warning, air that could kill them, and temperatures that range from freezing to burning. "This is where we will teach alien doctors to think like humans," Dr. Zethkri explained. "To improvise, to adapt, to never give up even when the situation seems hopeless." Jake's first day as head of emergency xenomedicine was busy. His students included doctors from 15 different species, all eager to learn what they called human crisis medicine. "The first thing you need to understand," Jake told his class, "is that there is no such thing as impossible. There are only situations that require different solutions." A young Korothan raised one of her rocky arms. "But Dr. Morrison, what if the environment is completely hostile to our biology?" "Then you adapt," Jake replied. "You use what you have, you make what you need, and you keep trying until you find something that works." A Delian student gurgled a question through his translator. "What if we don't know how to treat the species we encounter?" "All living things have the same basic needs," Jake said. "They need to breathe, they need their blood to flow, and they need their vital organs to function. The details are different, but the principles are the same." The weeks that followed were the busiest of Jake's life. He taught classes on improvised medicine, led training exercises in hostile environments, and consulted on medical emergencies across the galaxy. The techniques he had learned during Earth's wars were now being studied by the galaxy's best doctors. One afternoon, Jake was in his office reviewing student progress reports when his computer chimed with an urgent message. It was from the Galactic Emergency Response Center. "Dr. Morrison," the message read, "we have a situation on Mining Station Titan 7. Multiple species affected by unknown pathogen. Environmental conditions extremely hostile. Standard medical teams unable to approach. Request immediate assistance." Jake looked at the file. It was another impossible case. Toxic atmosphere, failing life support, unknown biological agent, and over 500 lives at stake. Jake stood up and reached for his medical kit. As he prepared to leave, Dr. Zethkri appeared in his doorway. "Impossible mission?" the alien doctor asked. "Looks like it," Jake replied. "Do you need assistance?" Jake paused. 6 months ago, no alien doctor would have offered to help with such a dangerous mission. Now they were volunteering to follow a human into deadly situations. "Actually, yes," Jake said. "Pick 3 of our best students. It's time for their final exam." An hour later, Jake was boarding a medical shuttle with Dr. Zethkri and 3 student doctors, a Korothan, a Delian, and a Mentari. They were all scared but determined to prove they could handle human-style emergency medicine. "Remember what we learned in training," Jake told them as they flew toward the mining station. When everything goes wrong, that's when we do our best work. As they approached the damaged station, Jake could see his students checking their equipment and reviewing their emergency procedures. They were aliens, but they were thinking like humans now, ready to face the impossible and find a way to win. Medical Station Hippocrates to Emergency Team 1, came Dr. Veltar's voice over the radio. The situation looks very bad. Are you sure you can handle this? Jake looked at his team of alien doctors who had learned to be brave like humans. They were ready for anything. We're sure, Jake replied. This is what we do. The mining station grew larger in their window, damaged and dark but full of people who needed help. Jake smiled as he prepared for another impossible mission. The galaxy had learned that humans never gave up, and now they were teaching everyone else to be just as stubborn. It was going to be a good day to save some lives,